The question came up, why do I make so many vases? And is the classic vase an influence? And the answer is yes. The classic vase is an influence. It's a long-time interest of mine. I seek it out. Museums are places where I see them mostly, and they are very compelling to me, especially the attic vases from ancient Greece. Each time I study the collection at the Met, for example, wandering through those rooms with the large vases, it charges me. I get back to my studio and get to work. The same thing happens with paintings and sculpture from numerous periods of art history. It could be Bosch, could be Caravaggio or Brancusi or Diebenkorn or Calder or any number of things, or it could be a particular museum like the Arts et Métiers in Paris or the Hermitage or LACMA. My curiosity is all over the place. I'll try to explain why historic vases interest me and how I've developed observations in several vase series. Between 25,000 and 10,000 years ago, humans began to create vase forms from clay. And early migration over the continents resulted in similarities of forms created by diverse cultures. Also, they couldn't resist decorating them with images of human activity. So thinking about this history, thinking about the similarities of forms that these people created, it's obvious that there's a common origin. Classic vase forms can be found from every culture, with variations according to their predilections. The classic vase forms from ancient Egypt are taller and more tapered than those of the Mayan culture, for example. The Ionian vase has a more geometric form with handles, suggesting architecture. Classic forms refer to human anatomy, with parts of the vase being called the lip, the neck, the shoulder, the body, the foot. A Ming Dynasty vase has a pronounced shoulder, tapering down to a foot that's smaller in diameter. This shape comes from classic human shape ideals, such as male and female figures with broad shoulders and slim waists, as depicted by the artists at the time. Now, vases in history were purposeful, intended for use in a house or a temple or marketplace, sometimes commemorating an event. Some vases were meant to be visually important, occupying the same place that a sculpture would be placed. And many of them had illustrations with symbolic meaning. Figurative imagery can be found on vases dating back to the earliest civilizations. Now, the attic vase from ancient Greece, these kind of pieces from that time are thought to be the first evidence of objects made by identifiable artists. An interesting thing. Artists' visions have been conveyed to viewers perpetually as the vases they created became important objects. These pieces were kept by families through generations or acquired by museums for the public to see. As a format for expression, the vase is ubiquitous. It endured changes over millennia, and it remains a compelling part of artistic expression. 100 years ago, Dôme Lalique in France made Art Nouveau and Art Deco vases based often on classic forms. So while derived from the classic, these vases suggested change toward a vision of the future as sophisticated and elegant works intended to enhance modern interior decor. The decorative motifs and drawings and modeled human figures or animals or plant life transformed the vase from utilitarian to works of decorative art. A good, strong, classic vase draws me to it, and I'm satisfied by its form. It makes me feel as good as any painting or sculpture, because each kind of art can have the same magnetic effect on me. Art's a hedonistic pursuit. For even the viewer, art's more of a pleasure than for other purposes. The vase is a format for exploration, for self-expression, and I use it often. The classic vases have a voice for me. They're purposeful, often conveying thoughts or capturing a moment in time. They're a window onto their respective civilizations. They're about humanity, not about process. I try to convey a feeling with some of my vases, specifically the vases with drawings. Humor is my favorite. When somebody laughs out loud at one of my pieces, I get a kick from that moment, which dispels any doubts that may have crept into my head regarding the necessary seriousness of art. Incongruity disguised in beauty with an element of surprise. It's an approach that I use to accentuate a concept. So I like to draw. I keep sketchbooks and I have dozens of them. They're a reference for me. And many vases that I've drawn are based on classic forms and based on my visits to museum collections. So the vase has been a format of expression for me for 45 years now. I've gone from feeling like the artist trapped by the vase to times when I made no vases for a year or two. But I find the vase form to be an exceptional format for the presentation of my drawings. Now I'll take you through a collection of my vases. Here's a bird vase, which owes its form to the shape of an ancient Roman drinking cup. The drawing wrapped around the vase depicts birds landing, with the birds in the air highly stylized as abstract images. I made the piece thick so that I could deeply carve the relief into the glass, which causes light to create highlights and shadows, accentuating the activity of the drawing. Like many artists, I'm fascinated by tall buildings and like to convey those feelings through my work somehow. And with these Art Deco building vases, I was clearly suggesting the forms of the tall buildings, classic in their own way with the stacked up geometric forms. Yet, it's a classic vase form, with a pedestal foot, a straight body, going up to a rounded shoulder. And while exaggerating the proportions this way, I maintain the balance of traditional form. I made these pieces at the Dome factory in France, blowing them into molds that I carved in graphite. The Art Deco reference in the vase form is strongly influenced by dome vases that I found in the factory archives, way up in the back, all these dusty shelves. They were paying homage to the classic forms of ancient Greece or China in their pieces. And my stylization of the form is an elimination of the lip and the neck and just bringing it up and truncating it. And then I also made the form two-sided. So from the top view, it's almond-shaped. And they have a female figure on one side and a male figure on the other side. So each vase depicts different thematic imagery. The skyscraper vases are based on the most elemental part of the classic vase, which is the small foot and the wide shoulder. The vessel shape suggests aspiration to great heights, as skyscrapers do. The motif of buildings around the vase suggests a city. The face vases were a study of forms over about 10 years. I made them in a large variety of shapes, and some obviously classic with my own alterations and additions. The point of the series was to present observations of nature and allusions to character traits with a face that embodied the theme. So their drawings are kind of abstract, with elements not obvious at first glance. The Etruscan bronzes were a main inspiration for this series because of the way they made handles into sculptures of humans and animals. The vase was a platform for three-dimensional scenes created by the added sculptures. The other main influence on me was the Circus Museum at the Ringling Collection in Sarasota. That place had such a goofball theme, and the antics of their theater really stayed in my mind for weeks. And I just kept thinking about it, and it's so weird, and it offered such rich material for imagery in my art. It was just too compelling, and I combined it then with my interest in the Etruscans and kind of formalized it. So there's a formality in the series in a certain way, and yet it's pretty flamboyant, all kinds of stuff that I like to do. This piece refers to the Ionian vases in its outline and also in the motifs on the surface. So the main element is also Ionic. It's from the Ionic capital with the two spirals, and that's one of the most well-known images from that culture. Each piece has some reference to classicism, and it's been a constant in my art. that's a brief explanation of my thinking, and I hope these insights to my process have been of interest to you. Thank you.